I started out with a rough sketch of what I wanted to draw using the blue paint. This makes sure that I'm not eyeballing it and that I know the proportions of everything in the picture. I tend to use blue for this step, but you can use whatever color you want. I added some random shapes that won't actually make it into the final product, but it was fun to draw out the little details that may or may not make it into the final product. Then I began adding permanent lines. I used the circle tool to make sure that all the lines were even and straight, and then I erased the parts from the circle that I didn't need anymore. Right here I'm making the handle of the cup, and I'm just using the circle tool as a kind of guide, not really using the circle itself, but just drawing around it. And finally the saucer, I used a very big circle trying to get it centered, and I erased the rest. I'm really happy that Animal Jam added the layers in the art studio. It's really helpful for planning out your drawings and making sure that it's all nice and neat. So as you can see, I erased the blue, and you can see this nice thin drawing of a cup and saucer. This is exactly my plan, and it looks really cute. I finished up the shape of the handle, and then I began to color it in. So I started with this kind of light gray around the border of the top of the cup. I really like the airbrush tool. It's very helpful for adding dimension and shading. I proceeded to add a little bit of shine to the brim, and then it was time to add some coffee into the cup. So I grabbed this kind of nice brown and I filled it in with the airbrush, making sure that I didn't touch the edges because I was going to go in with a smaller airbrush and make sure that it was all nice and neat. The goal with this drawing was not to rush, but to make sure that everything is nice and neat in its place. I then went in with a darker brown to portray a kind of shadow on the cup and the coffee. And then I continued to add a bunch of different brown shades to give the coffee some shading to make it look like it's liquid in a cup. The kind of coffee that I'm drawing is called a latte. It's coffee mixed with milk or cream. And a lot of the time with hot lattes, the barista will add a kind of heart or shape with the cream. So I'm adding more colors in the shape of a heart, including a little white heart in the very middle, which displays it as a very professional and cute coffee cup. Then I began to add some little bubbles in the coffee because when the milk is added, sometimes some little bubbles appear. So this just adds some more realism and makes it extra believable. My goal is to trick your eye into thinking that this is a real coffee cup. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to fill in the mug with a light, pretty grayish blue. I'm using the airbrush again because I just love that brush. I colored a little bit over the lines, as you can see, so I have to go back in with an eraser and make sure that there are no stray little pieces of color. The cup that I'm planning on painting is very ceramic, very shiny and smooth looking, so I'm going to add a lot of shading and a lot of different colors onto this cup. The gray brim of the cup kind of got lost under the coffee, so I repainted it on top. Of course, adding the shine on the sides. Every time I'm making a painting in Animal Jam, I make sure to save it every once in a while, just in case my phone runs out of battery or I crash, that I don't lose any of my progress. I added a little bit of shine to the cup and then I was done. I added orange in the background for some reason, but then I fixed that. And this is the cup so far. It looks really pretty and I'm super proud of it so far. Though I did want to add a little bit more dimension to the cup, so I added a little bit of shading right in the middle, blending that in with the smudge, and then I colored in the handle. I once heard another artist say that you should use the airbrush like a little crayon and color in everything with it and then shade on top. I found that tactic to be actually really helpful, and I honestly use it all the time. Just adding a tiny bit more shading onto the handle and it was done. I save it again, of course, and then I move on to the saucer. I wanted it to be kind of like a wood grain kind of saucer, so not really made of ceramic like the cup, but more like a wood material. So I colored in the parts that the paint bucket did not reach for some apparent reason. But I really find coloring in with the airbrush very therapeutic and very calming. So once I had finished coloring in all these little white spots, I continued to kind of scribble on top in my best attempt to kind of recreate the pattern of wood. I have never drawn wood grain before, so this is a new experience for me. Continuing to scribble, I just did that all over the saucer, and then I blended it in with the smudge tool. And I think that looked pretty good. So there was the top of the saucer. It looks really cute. I added a little bit of shading on it, add some dimension, a little bit of shine, and then to complete the drawing part, I colored in the bottom of the saucer where you can see the kind of side of it, and I used an eraser to clean that up. Also shading that a little to make sure that it didn't look flat compared to everything else. So I added a little bit more of a dark brown, and then the drawing portion was complete. I struggled to pick a background for a little bit, and then I realized that I kind of just like it white. I tried black, but that didn't really fit, so I just kept it the way it was. Finally, I wrote, "This jammer loves coffee." It was the evening when I was doing this and I was getting tired, so I just freehanded the writing. But I think it turned out pretty good. So this is the final result. I'm going to turn it into a masterpiece, and you guys can buy it for only 50 sapphires. It won't be on my main, it will be in the shop on my spare matcha s'mores. So be sure to check that out. With that, the video has come to an end. I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to like and subscribe and comment down below. I hope you all have an amazing day. Goodbye!